So everybody, welcome to the Rector's Forum. Thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce our guest in just a second, but simply want to remind those of you who are visiting with us, we'd love to have your name on our mailing list. We send out an email blast every Thursday. We'd love for you to be a part of that. It tells you what's coming up on Sunday. There are visitors cards and red welcome bags right outside. Today at All Saints, we put our faith into action every Sunday. Today we're focusing on our efforts to try to divert money from building more prisons to giving proper health care to people who have mental illness. And instead of criminalizing and felonizing those people, we want to do something different. So I've written a letter to not Assemblyman, but Supervisor Antonovich. Thank you very much. Helped me all the way through the morning like that. And I want you to sign on. Now, I am very excited about Charles Eisenstein being our guest this morning because I was given one of his books and read something that made my heart leap, and I began to use it as a mantra, and that is the phrase, the myth of the separate self. And I'm going to ask him to kind of unpack that for us, because I think it's one of the cancers in not only American thinking, but global thinking, that it's really a delusion, but more about that later. And I'm not going to read the entire biography, which I want you to go and read on Charles's website. But I want to give you a taste of it, not to give a kind of a taste of how he writes and how transparent and personal he is, and also tell you a little bit about him. And then our questions are going to kind of unpack who he is and why he's doing it anyway. But just the first paragraph and then a couple of other points. I will give you some of my background, although the intense transitions of the last few years have left me feeling like a new person. I wrote that sentence 2 years ago, and it's still true today. I was born in '67, was a very sensitive, intellectual, and dreamy child. I was always consumed by questions like, where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? So of course, embedded as I was in a culture that sees science and reason as the source of truth, I tried to figure out the answers. Graduated from Yale University with a degree in mathematics and philosophy. But my development of reason and intellect brought me no closer to any truth I really cared about. So he went to Taiwan, learned Chinese, found himself working as a translator, became a specialist in Eastern spiritual traditions, got married, had 3 boys, had a crisis in his life, came back, taught at Penn State's Department of Science, Technology, and Society. And since then, he has been the primary, potent, expressive person about sacred economics and giving us, the human family, a new way to do economics. I'm very excited to welcome him. Will you please warmly welcome Charles Eisenstein. Great to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Ed, for that wonderful introduction.
It's one of the things that I love to do. Sorry you weren't here for me to hug you.
Yeah.
So let's fill this thing out about what in your life led you to begin thinking about money in the ways that you discuss in your books.
You know, money is kind of unavoidable when you're thinking about any troubling thing in this world. Like you were just talking about diverting money from the prisons to mental health care and stuff like that. Like, why isn't that happening already? Why do we have so many prisons? If you really get curious and you start asking that why question, it doesn't take long before you get to profit. I was recently talking to a guy who does work in the prisons, and he says the people there understand very well that if they're in the streets of Newark, their lives are worth nothing. But if they're in a prison, they're worth $50,000 a year to somebody. So, and whatever it is, deforestation or the dying of the oceans or whatever, anything I looked at, I found money there. So I thought, well, I really want to understand money because it's so central to everything that's happening today. And why should it be? Like, why should money be this force for evil when ultimately it's not like, you know, a hurricane or something like that that's outside of ourselves. It's purely a human creation. So why did we create it this way? And how could we create it in a different way? And so that was kind of, well, that's one story of how I, you know, came to look at money.
So you were known as the guy who talks about sacred economics. So let's take that as our second beat. What is sacred economics?
Yeah, well, you know, at least economics today is thought of as the study of the money, of the moneyed life, the life of monetary transactions. So if there's anything sacred in this world, it certainly isn't that, for the reasons I just mentioned, not only on a collective level, but also on a personal level. You know, it's so common, maybe not universal, but almost universal, that the thing that's going to make you the most money isn't going to be the thing that best serves other people, society, and the planet. So it's kind of the opposite of sacred. So basically that book explores what would it take to make money as sacred as everything else in the world. And why is it that, yeah, like whatever money touches becomes not sacred? Like why is it this degenerative force, you know? And yeah, how do we change it? And also, especially because the habits of money and of the economic system that we live in infiltrate our psychology, you know, and our habits and our relationships. So it's not only, the book is not only about kind of public policy and these kind of, you know, geeky nuts and bolts changes in the system, but it's also how do we deprogram ourselves from the habits of money and all that goes along with it, which is, because money, like, you know, it's not, like, I'm not saying that money is the root cause of all of the terrible things that are happening on the planet. It's deeply embedded in it, but money itself, which is a story, is held inside of deeper stories, a deeper mythology. For example, the separate self that you were talking about.
So we should say that we may continue to hear from your fourth son, Corey. Is that right?
Carrie. Yeah, maybe I can signal them to. I have the doors closed here, but
no. We're not offended by that. We love children like Jesus, right? Let him come on in. I just wanted to identify Carrie.
Yeah, that's Carrie. He's the youngest of four.
He's the youngest of four.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the deprogramming process. So what are the essentials for that, for us to deprogram our culture so that we are having an economy that's sacred?
Well, I mean, I guess you could ask that question on many levels. How do you create systems change? How do you create change at the community level, at the interpersonal level? So I don't think I can give, you know, a universal formula for how to do that. But one of the concepts I work with a lot is changing the narrative or changing the story. And that's especially relevant when we're talking about money, because money itself is a story. I mean, these symbols on pieces of paper or in bank computers, they have power only because of our interpretations of them. So they're held in this matrix of interpretations and stories and symbols that gives them power. So, well, yeah, it's just such a broad question. But maybe I'll give I don't know if to go on the systems level or the personal level, but like one thing I noticed when I began to examine my habits of money and habits of competition. Like I had this kind of programming that no matter who I interact with, if I meet a stranger, meet a new person, or even people I know, that this person's out to get something from me. So I have to kind of protect myself from them. It's like this lens I'm wearing that turns everybody into a potential competitor or a potential threat. Whereas another perspective would, and this is what I'm striving to take on, is to see every person as a potential giver and recipient. Giver of something that I need and want, or a recipient of something that I desire to give. So the money economy that we have today contrasts with a gift economy. And we can see that as the money economy has grown, the gift economy has shrunk. But I'm not talking about like Christmas presents here. I'm talking about people helping each other in ways that aren't mediated by money. So, I mean, some of you are from a generation older than I am. But even in my generation, I remember when I was a kid in a suburban neighborhood, people did a lot more together, co-created things together, helped each other a lot more than they do today. Today in my neighborhood, people hardly even know each other. But back in those days, if you had some big project, like neighbors would come and help. And a couple generations before then, you know, even if it was a matter of building your house, like the village or their neighborhood, the people would get together and they would all help you build it. So you would look around and you would know that you needed each person and that they needed you, and you felt that you belonged. The production of entertainment and fun, that was also a communal activity. You know, we didn't purchase all of our entertainment then. Every town of 10,000 people or more had its own marching band, and the 4th of July parade was a big deal. You know, and everyone got together and they created a civic life together. And so the more that these human functions are converted into money, into paid services, in other words, child care, elder care, health care, food preparation, the maintenance of homes, the production of entertainment and recreation, you know, these become products. The economy grows, but the gift realm, the non-monetized realm, shrinks, and we're left more and more dependent on money, less and less dependent on the people around us, and therefore more estranged from each other. And then there's a whole other part about how our money system as it stands today generates competition and scarcity. Simply, and I'm not saying that there's no purpose for competition in this universe, okay? But our money system generates way more competition than would otherwise be present, because money is created as debt. So therefore, there is always more debt than there is money to meet the debt. Therefore, we're always in competition with each other for never enough. And you're secure, well, I could go on and on with this, but maybe I'll put it back to you, Ed, and see where it goes.
Thanks, that helps, and I think it gives us a taste. And let's just bracket the gift economy for a second, because we're going to have two questions that are going to come directly to you from people who are incarnating that in their life here in this church and in this community. But before we do that, you've suggested that human beings are naturally generous creatures. So can you kind of spell that out, and why do you have that kind of, I mean, it's a very hopeful, inspiring notion.
Yeah. I would say that we have a very deep natural desire to give. It's not our only desire, but it's a very powerful need. And if you've observed yourself in a situation where you were unable to give, where your gifts were not being applied towards something you care about, could be in a job or a relationship, you know, where your gifts are not recognized, they're not expressed, or they're diverted onto something that you don't care about, then you're not going to feel satisfied. You're going to feel like, I wasn't put here on earth to do this. This is not me. This is not my life that I'm meant to live. Because this, you know, on some level, we recognize that our lives are a gift. We didn't earn them. We didn't earn our birth. We didn't earn the sun. We didn't earn water. We didn't earn this planet that we live on. It was a gift to us. Every breath is a gift to us. We didn't earn these things. Therefore, having been so richly gifted, we have a natural gratitude. It's almost our default state, gratitude. And gratitude is the knowledge of having received and the desire to give in turn.
Yeah.
And that's a very different story of human nature than is conventionally offered to us, in which, in biology, we're programmed by our genes to maximize reproductive self-interest. In economics, we seek to maximize rational financial self-interest. And our structures, our system kind of conspires to make us enact that kind of behavior. Even in religion, there's this idea that who you really are is this kind of depraved, sinful being, and that goodness comes through the conquest of your nature with the help of God or Jesus or somebody like that. And so you transcend your biology, you transcend materiality, you transcend the flesh in order to rise to a higher state. Now, this kind of program for spiritual development exactly mirrors humanity's relationship to Earth, where we're trying to conquer and transcend, domesticate the wild, and someday rise above nature entirely. And the developed person is the one who isn't a slave to his desires. He's in the realm of mind or spirit or something like that. So these are two of the aspects of the deep story that money is embedded in. And I think that the transition that we're going through today goes all the way to that level, all the way, it's not just a technical tweak to our money system that some, clever, mathematically oriented person could calculate out and say, here's the money system that'll work better. It's grounded on a really different understanding of who we are and how the world works. And a lot of the proposals, the systems level proposals that I discuss in the book, they will seem outrageous and ridiculous to somebody who is thoroughly convinced that we are fundamentally interest maximizing separate selves. But if you've ever had an experience in your life, maybe if you've gone to a village in India or somewhere else where the gift culture is alive and where people are not trying to control and hoard all the time, but are in a sharing economy, then a lot of the things I write about seem much more practical.
Yeah, and we here at All Saints, I think the very heart and the DNA of one of the things we try to do is offer a counter narrative to the narrative that we are fallen, that we cannot do any good, and that we are not good in our core, and that we need some kind of salvation. And there's this place called heaven and a place called hell, and all of that really does drive this kind of competitive, individualistic, my religion is better than your religion, and in Christianity, my sect is better than yours. And it really does feed the economy, doesn't it? I mean, you've done some study about how the American economy is based on that kind of theology and how it's all of a piece, right?
Yeah. I think that what I was saying about religion is speaking to kind of a lot of mainstream established religion, especially Protestantism, which, Martin Luther explicitly said that. He said that religion is a private affair, essentially. It's about, the separate soul and its spiritual development and so on, and its salvation, right? But yeah, you could certainly make strong arguments, even from Scripture, that the message, the intended message of, for example, Jesus, was the opposite of that we're fallen creatures. You could say that forgive me for straying into theology here, but you could say that his message was basically, hey, I'm God, I'm a man, you're a man, therefore you must be God too. Whereas the message got turned upside down and turned into Jesus is God and you're not. Right. So like, I think that the kind of revival of these more esoteric traditions of Christianity is part of the same revolution that I'm writing about in economics. And you know, this is one of the things that I've been speaking about a lot too, is you know, you run into somebody and they're working, you know, with incarcerated people, and then somebody else is working to save the sea turtles, you know, and somebody else is involved in permaculture. For another person, it's maybe, you know, yoga or acupuncture or something like that, or racial justice. And we have the feeling that we're all allies. We're all actually working on the same thing. But what is this thing that we're working on? What is this alliance? And I think what it is, it's we're allied in our service to the transition in our stories, to the next story, which is no longer the separate self in a world of other, but an interbeing that says who you are is not this skin-encapsulated ego or soul in the envelope of a flesh or DNA-programmed meat machine, but who you are is the totality of your relationships. Perhaps a holograph in which that mirrors everything in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole, stay with the interconnectivity stuff and the interbeing stuff right now for a little bit. So I think that you know, Joanna Macy talks about the great turning, and which is another way of talking about this new narrative. We talk here about a new song, that whole thing. It just seems that that's happening, that is really going on, and that we can be hopeful about that. Say more about that if you don't mind. And then also go ahead and tie it, because I'm going to open this up to questions from other people. Go ahead and tie it to your thinking about our relationship to Mother Earth.
Yeah, okay. So we've lived in this story of separation that goes back thousands of years, and that's been intensifying through the centuries, through agriculture, through industry, through the information technology, which has rendered us more and more into these seemingly isolated, separate beings. And on the collective level, it's an increasing separation from nature, seeing nature as an other, seeing nature as something that, we might conditionally depend on it until we find a technological substitute. I read books when I was a teenager about how someday we would conquer the insects. We wouldn't need them anymore. We would have a world with no insects. And well, what about pollination? Not a problem. We'll have hydroponics. We'll have a technological fix to it. Well, we'll maybe have synthetic food by then, because the onward march of technology and science is going to free us from our bondage to nature. We thought that nature was just a bunch of stuff out there, and now this story is falling apart on every level. The ecological crisis, of which climate change is just the first initiatory experience of something that's actually much, much bigger than that. That's showing us that we're not actually separate from nature, that no matter how we try to insulate ourselves from the effects of our actions, they come back to us in some way, which is something that we can feel. Like the new story, which is also an ancient story of interbeing, is something that we can feel the truth of in our bodies. When you see your forest being bulldozed down, or when you read about a species going extinct and you see the photograph of the last passenger pigeon, it hurts, Like, why does that hurt? Is it because you've made some implicit calculation that your rational self-interest is going to be affected and you will not benefit from the medicines that could have been made from that biodiversity in the rainforest? It's obviously not that. It hurts because it's happening to you. It's happening to you because on some level, you're not separate from anything that's happening. And so that's the story of interbeing, something that we can feel. And so the transition in stories, it's happening because of a push and because of a pull, I think. The push is just the crises that are generated by separation. I did mention the ecological level. I mean, the political level too, you know, like we can't insulate ourselves from the blowback of the things that we as a nation have been doing on this planet. We can try to build higher walls, you know, tighter fences, more security, and surveil every human being in the world. But the violence comes back underneath the walls as maybe domestic violence, you know? And so we can't keep it up. And there's a baby crying, but that's not domestic violence. He is ready for his nap, I think. Yeah, so these crises are converging upon us, birthing us into maybe not immediately a new story. I mean, first what happens is we go through a space between stories where all of the old certitudes disintegrate. And we kind of don't know who we are anymore. We don't know what's real anymore, even. On an economic level, we saw this almost happen in 2008, where the old standbys that seemed like the very essence of permanence and reliability, like blue chip stocks and AAA bonds and things like that, they were revealed as, you know, just a bunch of paper, you know, just a bunch of bits. And in my generation, people don't really trust those things anymore. So so these crises are pushing us into a time of uncertainty, of unknowing, and it's kind of an empty space into which the new story and the new systems around that story can grow. And right now, they're all kind of waiting on the margins. And they're going to remain, I mean, almost anything that you call alternative or holistic or radical, you know, they're kind of sitting on the margins, developing, so that when the core breaks down, these new structures can rush in and become the basis of a new world.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, that's enough for that. And then we're being pulled also by these glimpses that we see of what the world could be.
Thanks. So I'd like to keep the conversation between just you and me, but that would be selfish and the myth of the separate self. And it's time to open this up. So the first question is going to come to you from Scott Nelson, who's a member of our parish and has been reading your stuff and doing a lot of thinking about how to change his own life in terms of this gift economy. You and I talked about him on the phone the other day. So Scott, come on up and ask your questions. Can you see Scott, Charles? I don't know.
Is that him there?
Yeah, so go ahead, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Go. Okay. Hey, Charles.
Hey.
I read Sacred Economics a couple years ago, and it moved me deeply, many different ways. One of them being the sense of tragedy I've always felt at the separativeness of people in our world caused by the competition for resources, I guess, and how it separates us from one another and keeps us from sharing ideas, resources, wisdom. And one of the groups that I've been looking to for years for solace and inspiration has been the Native American peoples. And to me, they're a great example of a group that has been marginalized to a huge degree and has a huge gift to give to us. So I always thought if I ever had the chance to ask you a question, it would be what your thoughts might be on how to bring the wisdom of Indigenous peoples to our world today to help us weather this transition and these crazy ideas that won't be so fringe anymore because all of our certainties are kind of collapsing.
You know, one thing that happens as our stories stop working for us is that we get humbled. You know, we used to be so sure that we had the right answer, to how to live life on Earth. Because look at the glory of our civilization. You know, we've conquered the viruses and the bacteria. We're off into space. You know, like 50 years ago, that was strong. But now none of the glorious promises of the 50s and 60s have really come to pass. You know. Certainly not the end of disease or 200-year lifespans or the end of poverty, crime, racism. I mean, all these things, we were going to tackle those problems, you know, and so to the contrary, you know, it's hard to deny that things are getting worse and worse in many ways. So this humility has made us more open to thinking, you know, maybe some of these people that we've denigrated and marginalized and called backward and primitive, maybe they have knowledge that we need right now. So I think that the interest in Native American life ways and spirituality, I mean, there's certainly an element of kind of cultural appropriation, you know, and it gets commercialized and stuff like that, and or made into somebody's identity, which is another kind of expropriation. But I think also there's like a genuine desire, a genuine knowledge, recognition that our ways are failing us and we need new knowledge from the outside. And that doesn't mean that like we can directly import indigenous practices, you know, like whenever, you know, I'm at, say, a conference and somebody is trotted out to, you know, invoke the 4 directions or something like that, it always feels a bit fake to me. Because those rituals don't carry the same meaning in the worldview that we're still immersed in as they do in an indigenous setting. But I think that there is something to learn, at least like as an inspiration, at least as an example of a different kind of way of life that communicates to us that what we're used to isn't the only way. It's not the only reality. It doesn't have to be normal. But as to like how to translate, say, Native American gifting practices into a modern society that, you know, coordinates the labor of millions or billions of people around the planet. I mean, how to do that? I don't know. And I think it's going to take a lot of breakdown of the way we have been doing things and a lot of experimentation and trial and error before something emerges that's informed by indigenous practices. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mess, I think. You know, like this is new territory for us, and there's no map for it. And I think the most important thing is to be willing to play and to try stuff, you know, to experiment, to dance, and to not get it right the first time.
Thanks. So Therese Brummel is going to come up. Not everybody's going to come up. We're going to get these microphones out to everybody. But Therese, say just a little word about what happened here yesterday, the Repair Cafe. Therese also was very instrumental in our setting all this up. So she's got loads of questions, but I'd like for her to just kind of describe a little bit about the Repair Cafe yesterday to promote it for the next time, you know, and its ongoing life, and also to pose any question you want.
Thank you, Charles, for being with us. I'm so happy to have you. Yesterday we had a Repair Cafe hosted by Transition Pasadena, and this All Saints Church graciously gave a very large room upstairs. We had about 140 people, and we did 75 repairs in 3 hours. This was all done outside of the money economy, inspired by you in part. And I thought I might tell a little story from yesterday, which was that I observed 2 people who had come for the first time to do repairs. Both entered kind of timidly. One said, well, I'm not very good at this and I don't know how to do it, but you know, I'll be here in case you need some backup help. And by the time she was leaving, she was like floating a foot off the ground, like, this was so great. And the other was a young man who said, I really don't know how to fix things, but I want to learn, and if you let me just sit next to you, maybe I could take the machine apart and then you could tell me what to do. And he also just left full of joy for what he had done. And I guess the question I've been thinking about is, Ed gave a great sermon on fear. And I was thinking about the gift economy when he was talking, and wonder if you can talk about your own experience living inside the gift economy, and how, is it fearful? And do you meet that fear in some particular way?
Yeah. Like, for one thing, I want to dispel the illusion that I live, you know, in some exalted gift economy, you know. Like, I mean, I do practice some things that are not really conventional. Yeah, you know, like if I give speeches or events, it's usually by donation, and my books can be read online. You don't have to buy them and stuff like that. And there's a few other things I do, but you know, it's not like, you know, I'm walking around with my begging bowl and you know, living without possessions and stuff like that. So just wanted to you know, make that clear. But I think the essence of a gift is that you're not really in control, at least not fully in control, of how the return gift is going to come. So if I, Therese, lend you, you know, $5,000, and I make you sign a contract and put up collateral, and basically I'm saying, I'm going to make you, I want assurance that I'm going to get that money back with interest. That's not a gift, right? We recognize that that's not a gift. But if I just, you know, give you the money and say, yeah, whenever you don't need it anymore, you can pay me back, then like we recognize that as more of a gift. You know, even if I'm lending it to you and expecting it back, I'm letting go of some control here, but there's no contract, you know. So like, I don't think that it's black and white, what's a gift and what isn't. In functioning gift cultures, there is kind of an expectation, you know, if you host somebody at your house, you treat them as, in many cultures, this is considered almost sacred. The guest gets treated with respect, you know, gets fed, you know, you wouldn't dare let somebody leave without feeding them dinner, you know, and like, there's like this whole kind of culture of hosting. But once you've done that, then you kind of expect that if you visited that person, that they would do the same for you. Or that if your son were in their neighborhood, you know, in their village or something like that, like there's a bond that's created. So as far as fear goes, though, like, yeah, I mean, occasionally, you know, I'll have this twinge, this voice that says, you know, are you going to be okay? If you don't charge for this, you know, if you like, but mostly I'm like, yeah, whatever, it'll be fine, you know. And it might be because, I mean, I went through bankruptcy, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, you know, and it's broke for a while, but it was fine, you know, like when I lost my apartment, I stayed in someone's living room for a couple months, you know, and then like I had found places to stay. Like I realized I wasn't actually afraid of going hungry or my kids going hungry. It was really what I was afraid of was humiliation, asking for help and being put in that position of dependency and a kind of a debt of gratitude. You know, in our culture, we try to stay independent. We don't want to owe anybody anything. We don't want to have you know, had received these gifts that then obligate us to give back to the universe, you know, if not to that person. And we strive for this ideal of financial independence, which is really, I don't need anybody. I can pay for it, thank you. So I kind of got deprogrammed from that. But, you know, like part of it is that I'm, you know, white and come across as educated, and I'm one of the safe people to help. You know, and if I looked different and spoke differently and you know, I might have a lot more and didn't have, you know, friends who are, you know, have at least some means to help, if I lived in a ghetto and all my friends were, destitute, then it would be very different. So, but I think that there's always a reason not to be generous. There's always that fear there. And people in the most extreme conditions sometimes exhibit tremendous generosity. In fact, I'm going to read you, I happen to have right here, a quote from Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor. As he said, we who lived in concentration camps can remember those who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last pieces of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitudes to any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Beautiful.
Thanks for asking that question. Okay, we have so little time, but I really want, Charlie, Ravi, will you ask a question from where you are?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Maybe a waypoint to the gift economy is the sharing economy, and was curious about your thinking about the emergence of things like really inexpensive cloud computing technology, companies like Uber, like Zipcar, like Airbnb, being early manifestations of broader sharing, sort of lower resource load, and sort of moving to this zero marginal cost world that somebody like Jeremy Rifkin talks about.
Yeah. I mean, there's some pretty potent critiques of the sharing economy as well. But I do think it's a step toward a gift economy. It eliminates, like a lot of these things like Uber and Airbnb, they kind of eliminate the middleman and allow. They're certainly not eliminating money in these transactions, but they are reducing the amount of money used for these kinds of transactions. Like the number of hotels that Airbnb will eventually replace will be much more than, in terms of economic transaction value, will be more than it brings. So these things are part of a degrowth economy, and the emergence of maybe peer-to-peer structures. Even though, like right now, there's a dark side, and in some cases, they might be replacing gift relationships, where your neighbor might have just given you a ride, but now you pay for it. So it can cut both ways. Yeah, I mean, you can go online and read some of the critiques of the sharing economy and put that side by side with Jeremy Rifkin and come to your own conclusions.
So Charles, unfortunately it's 11 o'clock and we've got to go to church. And I just want to thank you for this and extract a promise from you that the next time you're in Los Angeles, you'll let us know, because we'd like you to come here so we can spend some more time with you.
Yeah, I might be in Los Angeles in March or something.
So let's put it down. I think everybody here wants you to come back.
All right.
All right?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird.
So I hope you hear that, feel it, and take it in.
This whole business of being on a screen,
I know.
It kind of contributes to the idea that everything important can be digitized and converted into data.
Yeah.
But I think that there's something about physical presence that is beyond what we quantify.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. So, yeah, we want to hug your neck. So we'll arrange a date and we'll invite all these people back. Thanks again, Charles.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.